Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing great. Today I welcome you in this void to talk about Niri. Niri is a window manager and its only purpose is to open, move and arrange windows in a specific way. Niri is designed around a scrollable experience, and what do I mean by that? Well, let me show you. Using hotkeys that I set up, I'm opening windows like the terminal, the file manager. Let me also open up a text file. As you can see, the windows are arranged in horizontal tiles. Opening a new window moves you to the right side of the focused window, and you can open unlimited windows, as many as you want. To navigate them, you scroll back and forth. There's also the option to resize them to set proportions that you can define. You can manually grab them and change the position, or stack them just like that. Aside from horizontal scrolling, there's also the option to use virtual workspaces with vertical scrolling, and to make things easy to navigate, you can use a hotkey to overview all workspaces and the windows opened on each workspace and manage them from there as well. Because Niri is just a window manager and not a full desktop environment like KDE or GNOME, you don't have any user interface. To be able to properly use Niri, you can either try making and configuring your own interface type elements. For example, the usual taskbar that many people are familiar with can be built with QuickShell or Waybar. For application launchers, you have options like Rofi, and this command can be bound to a hotkey to open up with a shortcut key. The other option for an interface is to use configurations that other people have built. The two most popular options are Dank Material Shell and Noctalia Shell. Let me show you how both of those look really quick. This is the basic Dank Material Shell. I don't have a wallpaper set up, I will explain a bit later why. It gives you a user interface, a settings menu. A big advantage of Dank Material Shell is that it allows you to easily configure the position of your monitors. You can just drag and drop, and it will translate this into the configuration file for Niri. The other option is Noctalia Shell. They are both built on QuickShell, so they will feel similar. Look-wise, I prefer Noctalia, but regardless if you go for Noctalia, I still think that you should install Dank Material Shell because it makes managing some settings better, or you could manually create and organize different settings related files. To install both of those is a bit tricky because there are package conflicts regarding QuickShells, but it's doable, and I will show you at the end of the video where I will showcase in a virtual machine on a fresh install of Nobara how to go from KDE to Niri with the two shells set up. Now, managing Niri settings will require you to edit a configuration file. There is a default configuration available that has everything needed and explained. This is one big file that contains absolutely every setting possible regarding Niri, and it is a bit harder to navigate. This is why I suggest installing Dank Material Shell, because the installation process of it splits the main config file into several files that each handle their own thing. I left the main config file only with theme related settings like the cursor, the animations, the layout, the border, the presets for the resizing of the windows. For example, I set it to either take half the screen or the full screen, and environment settings. You can see here that I played around with some of those. I selected the platform theme as KDE to basically import the settings like dark mode and selected icons into Niri. Otherwise, Dolphin, for example, wouldn't be themed correctly. There's also an option to have everything themed via Qt6 CT. It is an application that manages Qt6 app themes. You can change things like the icons, the fonts, the colors. At the top of this file, I have links to other configuration files that I'm using. For example, outputs handles the monitors, how they are set up. Window rules you can select different types of rules for windows, for example, the corner radius. If it's opened floating or not, you can toggle this with the hotkey, for example. So right now the window is floating. You can add application-specific rules. For example, I want Discord to only open on a specific monitor. And you can change things like opacity of the window. The binds file is for keyboard hotkeys, and the auto start file is for applications and script that you want to start at system boot. Now you might have noticed here plasmashell. Why? Well, because you can. So if I do start file plasmashell, this along with the environment settings that I set up in the configuration file right here, I can actually enable the KDE user interface, and this allows me to change theme related settings like the colors, wallpaper, for example. Let me also show you the icon theme as well. And most importantly, it allows me to use wallpaper engine for KDE. It is a bit limited, you can change the cursor theme from there, and a lot of system settings cannot be changed. Also, the KDE panel and widgets are kind of usable, but I don't really recommend it because they feel awful. So if I change the file, and this is just a custom command, it copies one file to the config directory. So if you can see here, this is the Plasma panel, and it kind of works, but you can see that the windows are not really properly sized. You could try to use this as it is, but in my opinion it's a bit junky and not really worth it. But for all of this to work properly, you need KDE. This is why I suggest when installing an operating system to have a stable desktop environment like KDE or GNOME. For example, the CacheOS installation allows you to select Niri as the only environment, but if you want to switch to Niri, I think it's better and safer to first have a proper desktop environment and install Niri afterwards. For file management, I have both Dolphin and Nemo installed. Why both of them? Well, Dolphin works amazingly in 99% of the cases, except if I want to open a game file from Steam. So for example, I take a game, right click, browse local files, you can see that Dolphin is not themed correctly. That is not a problem with Nemo, and to set it up, all you have to do is open the KDE settings, go for default applications, and select Nemo. Apply it, close it, and now when I open some game files, you can see here that it has a correct theme. I'm not sure if there is other way to fix the theming of Dolphin. This is just the workaround I found. You could only use Nemo, but in my opinion Dolphin is a better file manager and I prefer using that as much as possible. Something else I had to do, again Steam related, if I want to add a non-Steam game, I open up the window, click browse, and nothing happens. To make this work, I had to add in the config directory a specific folder, and in this folder I had to create the portals.conf file, which only contains those two lines right here. In order to make sure this works, you need two packages installed. I will put them on the screen. Now, why did I set a default and a file chooser? Well, the file chooser is just for the Steam use case, and if I put GTK simply as the default, then I would have problem with OBS. I wouldn't be able to screen share or screen record. Now that I have this file right here, I can just restart the process, and if I go back to Steam, Games, add non-Steam game, browse, you can see that now I have a window that allows me to browse computer files. And lastly, I want to talk about game tweaks, because By the nature of Niri's window management, some games will act weird and might not get full screen properly. So far from what I've seen, it's about 50% chance that it will happen. One example that I can give you is Dark Souls 2. If I delete this launch command and start the game, as you can see, the game is not getting full screen even though it's supposed to be. To fix this, I'm using GameScope to add some custom launch commands. I talk more about this in my Steam gaming video. The main options I use are force grab cursor, so that when the game is focused, the cursor will not leave the window, -F to full screen it, and the variables for resolution. If I don't include those, the game will default to 720p and my monitor is 1080p. Now with those launch commands set, if I open up Dark Souls, you'll see that everything will be fixed. And that's about it. Unlike KDE, which just works out of the box, Niri requires quite a bit of setting up. I had to spend hours trying to find solutions for my issues. Hopefully this video will help you make your life easier if you decide to try out Niri. Thanks for watching, and I will leave you with the time lapse of setting up Niri and the tool shell configs on a fresh installation of Nobara.